Imagine this choice. You want to buy a Marantz amp, and on one side you have this pure analog amplifier with no special features or functionality, and on the other side you have this spectacularly versatile amplifier with a DAC, streaming module, HDMI, bunch of inputs and outputs both analog and digital, and with the same power amp and preamp inside as the analog one. I think the choice is pretty obvious here which you should go to. But I chose the analog amp, and I will explain why. It's not often that I'm so surprised by the design quality of consumer-level amplifiers as I am with the new lineup of Marantz integrated amplifiers and audio-video receivers. It has a very material, industrial design with gold accents typical of Marantz. It just oozes the quality and prestige. The way the knobs feel and turn, especially the way the lights fall on the textured part of the side panels, giving them a different look depending on the light, it's really awesome. As for features and functionality, this is a pure analog amplifier, and I love that, but not many companies these days are brave enough to take that route. Audiophiles' needs have changed a lot even over the past 10 years. A quality DAC is now a must in almost every integrated amplifier, along with a lot of analog and digital connectivity. This one has only analog inputs, without any digital inputs such as coaxial, optical, or balanced. You have 5 analog inputs, 1 phono input, pre-out, subwoofer out, and even a power amplifier in. There's also a dedicated approach to isolating the CD input and phono input from the rest of the analog inputs, creating even more care in isolating inputs from the current. It's already an amazing analog amp that takes special care in separating and cleaning the flow of the sound for a more pristine and perfect sound. We are constantly pushing towards the futurify and expect our systems to have an almost all-in-one feel, so Marantz creating the Model 50 is a gamble they're taking, and who knows if it will pay off in the end. And I don't know, as I said, many audiophiles now fall into 2 categories, all-in-one or all separates, regardless of their size and cost. The Marantz 50 is in gray area, combining amp and preamp in one box. It doesn't fit nearly into either the all-in-one or all separates category, making it a bit harder to sell. But it wasn't hard for me, and I'll tell you why. The Marantz Model 50 is around 108,000 euros, while the sibling, the Marantz Model 40N, is around 2,400 euros. And I already have a great DAC and streamer at home. So honestly, for that 600 euros, I wouldn't get any more features and functionalities that I use. But then I thought even more, even if I didn't have all that equipment at home, I could, with that 600 euros saved by buying the Marantz Model 50, or maybe add just 200 euros more, buy a really great music streamer like Eversolo, Blue Sound Node, or something like that, and I get far better DAC and far better streamer than the one which is in the Marantz Model 40N. True, it's not all in one box, but the rise in sound quality is unquestionable. By getting a great amp and preamp, you can invest your money however you like, without being constrained by Marantz choices. Maybe you'll wait a bit longer and save even more money to buy a phenomenal DAC, and then you can have those pieces work however you like. The great joy of hi-fi is experimenting and building systems. One thing that's a bit hard to find cheaply is an HDMI input, which is a phenomenal feature that the Model 40N has. But you can buy the Marantz CD 50, with HDMI, with a better DAC, and in case a better streamer than the one in a Model 40N, along with of course a great CD player as an add-on. I think that combination of the Model 50 and a CD 50 is much better than the 40N, albeit more expensive and require far more space. It's an ultimate digital station for your needs that work much better in everything than what 40N does. And if you wanna see more about Marantz CD50, please look in the description of this video and there'll be my review which I did. I know, shameless plug-in, but I also recommend to see it because I think it's a great review and you also might be inspired to get this really great CD player. So in the end, I realized that the Model 50 is more for me. But there's one more thing I failed to mention. While not worlds apart, the Model 50 did sound a bit clearer and more concise than the Model 40N. It had a bit more clarity and a more expression in the top end. Now, this isn't something you can feel very organically as it was just a little bit, but when I did tests side by side, you could definitely feel it after a longer sessions of listening. So the final decision was made. I purchased the Model 50. I really did, and this is the review I'm doing, and I really want to explain all the great stuff and all the bad stuff with Marantz Model 50. My time listening to Model 50 was filled with joy and happiness, but also a bit of longing. Don't get me wrong, the Model 50 is an awesome amplifier, and I will explain why in this review. But this is an 1800 euros amp, and it should be reviewed and tested as such, in comparison to similar amps. There are some things I missed in this amp that I got in other amps in this price range. Firstly, if you wanted my review of the Stereo 70 and think it might have the same sound, you will be somewhat right and also somewhat wrong. This is a typical Marantz house sound, so you know where their money went. To create a warm, big sound with emphasis on lower mids and upper bass. Right, a typical Marantz sound. But also the Model 50, 40 and 30 are trying to shake up that image a little bit, as they want to be amps that offer a lot more in this price range. They're putting a lot of emphasis on refining the top end as well. Yep, you heard me right. The mids are clearer and the treble has more expression and it delivers more details and textures. It is obvious that Marantz is trying to preserve their core sound, but with more maturity and precision. To emphasize, up until now I have only listened to the 5000, 6000 and 7000 series of Marantz amps, which were all fantastic amps in their price range. The 6000 was a killer value and quality. Let's start with the best part of this sound, the beautiful hug of that warm sound it reproduces. If you have a problem with listening to poorly produced recorded music, no worries, Marantz has your back. It rounds and smooths those rough edges to create a more pleasant sound. It serves as a much easy listen with an easy hours and hours of listening by completely and superbly controlling the low end, which helps to neutralize the top end a bit. It is a great amp to combat bright speakers like, Bowers and Wilkins and similar like those. It produces an incredible big and sprawling sound. And the bass. Oh my, if you set up this amp and start playing your favorite tunes which starts with a build up of sounds similar to an intro to a Telegraph Road from Dire Straits or Blade Runner Blues, you'll be shocked by the sheer mass of sound rushing towards you. Of course, you will need speakers that are talented with bass to truly experience that synergy and that wild sound between these speakers and amp. But it's definitely not just the entire spectrum of bass, but it also blends into the lower mids to make everything feels so big and sweet. I'm always surprised by this amp's presentation of bass. It is extraordinary, and its attempt to push details and texture through it is truly amazing. And that sweetness and smoothness come from the midsection, not picking up and staying attached to the bass. Depending on what you expect from this amp, you might be really satisfied or a bit disappointed. Those who expect a lot of smoothness, warmth, and weight will obviously be really happy. Vocals are amazing with this amp as well. If you get speakers with a good imaging and clear the air superbly, you'll be given a rendition of vocals with a lot of expression and presence. This amp does a great job giving vocals definition to rival other instruments and make those acoustic vocals and ballads sing to you. And that beautiful singing has a lot of timbre with left, right and center placement. There's a lot to be heard here as this is a mature Marantz amp. It enriches the vocals, capturing the breathing, long movement and the room properties of where it was recorded. You hear that, you feel that, and yes, this amp doesn't bring the best imaging in the game. It doesn't separate the vocals like significantly, nor does it bring the utmost textures and details out of vocals. But there is something like nighttime listening that just oozes Marantz sound. How easy it is to listen and sail through the sonic seas of the soundscapes they create. Soundstage is an interesting aspect here. Initially, it appears really large, but the more I listened, the more I realized that it was not the width and the scope of the soundstage I was hearing, but just the weight and the presence of the sounds. They were so large and the scope was so big that I actually thought the soundstage was really huge. There is a good separation among the instruments here, but it didn't throw like the biggest reach and it didn't allow my brain and the ears to place them on separate parts of the stage as seamlessly as with some other amps in this price range. To summarize the mids, they're beautiful, smooth, with a decent separation and presence. But while Marantz chooses this warm sound, it sacrifices a bit of clarity and transparency. So separation is not the best in class, but this is a great amp, and it does deliver decent enough separation and clarity for many to enjoy. It's just that I try to be picky, as this is what the reviewers do, especially when you're reviewing like amp in this price range. The same issue applies to energy. If you come from something like a Rega and expect that this amp will deliver high octane, fun and powerful rhythmic sound for your speakers to resolve, you might be disappointed here. However, I can tell you right away that I was surprised by how well it actually performed. This is a warm amp, as the term suggests, with a big, weighty, sweet sound. By default, that sound slightly veils the upper frequencies, as it is a nature of the warm sound. However, on the Model 50 and Model 30, Marantz manages to clean up the upper ranges, allowing them to blossom. It shows placement and separation of all the sound that drifts in that area of dynamics, and it also maintains a certain energy while listening throughout this amp. I love percussions, and I appreciate well-produced pieces with all the possible organic and textural percussions that can breathe in this area. I can feel the strike and understand what properties and qualities it has. Although I can't say it performs the best in price range, obviously, it is still quite good. With its warm sound, fantastic bass and expressive treble, it creates an interesting cocktail of sounds. If you enjoy a warm sound, there's a lot here to love and enjoy for your audiophile ears. Just don't expect the best treble in this price range. Don't expect very expressive, in your face, close to you, right next to you treble. Just don't expect stuff like that, and I think you might be surprised by how well the Marantz organize and place treble on the soundstage. Regarding the synergy, this amp is best paired with neutral or punchy and energetic speakers, favoring those that are not too heavy or specialized in the lower end. I found it particularly enjoyable with a balanced speakers, as it helps neutrally highlight the music's tendencies. If the song is bass oriented like much electronic music, it will allow Marantz to create amazing sound explorations. And same like for example for like guitar driven music, the guitars will have enough weight and clarity with the neutral speakers. And Marantz is allowing you to experiment at your leisure, but in my opinion avoid rich heavy bass speakers, unless you're building a home theater system or enjoy abundant bass and warmth. But one combination which surprised me to no end is how well Marantz pairs with Bowers and Wilkins. Because Bowers and Wilkins are very energetic, punchy, driven speakers, what Marantz does is able to take that treble, that high end, ground it a little bit to make it a little bit more manageable while retaining its power and punch. And that combination is just made in heaven. I think speakers like very punchy speakers like Bowers and Wilkins works also phenomenally with Marantz. I prefer mostly the neutral speakers as I like to experiment a little bit here and there, but that punchy speakers with Marantz sounds chef's kiss. I do recommend that you, if you can, test that in any audio room that you can. Let me briefly touch on my real-life listening sessions. I'll start with the jazz fusion legendary album, The Inner Mounting Flame by the Mahavishnu Orchestra. It's an energetic album with an extremely talented rhythmic section. The bass and the drums have a very organic, neutral feeling, almost alive, despite being, of course, a studio-produced album. John McLaughlin's guitar leads the album, and I wanted that guitar to feel super close, to close my eyes and just enjoy this sonic journey. Marantz could achieve this if paired with speakers like Bowers and Wilkins, which are, as I said previously, match made in heaven for this amp. It brought enough energy and passion, while guitars and drums had the right weight. With more balanced speakers, I might not have felt that, as Marantz probably wouldn't provide as much reach or expression in the mids and treble. But here it works perfectly. It's one of those moments where you close your eyes and just enjoy the groove, immersing yourself in a beautiful sonic heaven. For electronic music, the real hero is Marantz. Listening to Aphex Twin, Square Pusher, and Tim Hacker, especially the Hacker's album Virgins, as I think one of the best electronic albums of 21st century, was a revelation. The chaotic yet ethereal sounds with a deep bass from my triangles floored me. The sound wasn't the most detailed or informative, but it carried me away. Unless you're someone who seeks micro details and expressions, Marantz is exceptional for electronic music. It handles harsh high notes that electronic music often poorly produces with grace. The Virgins sounded fuller and more textured in the lower end. It's one of those albums where you want to listen to the entire thing in one sitting. Marantz is a fantastic choice if you're mostly listening to electronic music and just dance music and music with a lot of bass beats and lower end beats. Marantz is also superb for ambient, pop or rock albums produced by Brian Eno or Danny Lanois, like Peter Gabriel's So. The song Red Rain sounded great, filled with 80s warm bass. It works fantastically for relaxing and enjoying endless celestial sounds. Pair it with speakers like Dali's, which have beautiful mids, and enjoy life and music effortlessly. Play some Harold Budd's The Pavilion of Dreams and change your life. First, my favorite amp in this price range is the Musical Fidelity M5 SE. I still prefer the Musical Fidelity, not necessarily because it's a better amp, but because I prefer how it resolves the sound. By taking a more balanced approach, it achieves a greater transparency and detail exposure. The sound is not as large and imposing as Marantz, and it doesn't push your bass to be as detailed and sized, but the bass still has a nice firm grip. It's a balanced amp with the hints of darkness and masculinity, which I also appreciate. The treble is also nicer in the sense that it allows your speakers to showcase their talents. If your speakers are rich in treble, the sound will be rich there. If they are neutral, you will have a flatter line. It helps resolve and clean the upper spectrum that way a bit more. It's a sound I prefer, so it largely depends on your perception of these two amps. If you want a smoother, warmer sound with an incredible voice reproduction, go for Marantz. For more neutral, balanced, transparent and detailed sound, choose Musical Fidelity. Another amp in this price range is the Rega Elex. Rega specializes in dynamic scalability, and if you're familiar with Regas, you know what that means. It offers a powerful, lean and punchy sound. As you read in my review, these two amps are quite different in sound signature. Marantz has a big, weighty sound, while Rega is lean and punchy. Marantz has a better communication and soundstage, scope and everything, making vocals sound beautiful and creamy with a better imaging. However, Rega excels in resolution and details, especially detail revelation, offering a great lean sound that audiophiles might appreciate far more to like Marantz, as it provides you with a better ability to track placements, positions of instruments on a soundstage with astonishing timing and precision, making clinical listening sessions enjoyable and amazing. Choose based on which sound suits you better. Another amp to consider is the Denon PMA 1700 NE. Denon is a more typical integrated amp with all the inputs and outputs, Bluetooth, a phenomenal phono input, etc. In terms of usability and flexibility, Denon excels. But what about the sound? Both emphasize bass, but a little bit differently. Denon emphasizes strength and warmth, making the bass more impactful with more attack and details, and less veiled. This results in more transparency and a bit more detail. However, I prefer Marantz in this direct comparison. While my audiophile ears might choose Denon, my preference for leisure and enjoyment leans towards Marantz for its smooth, warm and all-encompassing sound. Marantz creates beautiful renditions for listening to music day and night. Denon might be better for movies, but that's a small note. In the end, Marantz has positioned itself strongly among amps in this price range. It delivers a great warmth while reaching beyond that cloud to reveal details and clarity. It's an appealing option for those who may not be fully convinced by Marantz musicality. This is a great amp that can satisfy many listeners, especially those seeking warmth or stability with bright speakers. Its blissful, large scope of sounds will make you fall in love with music, making everything creamier and prettier. With great bass, beautiful mids, and surprisingly decent treble, it will be your listening companion for a mysterious and charming evenings of music. Marantz is an analog dream, and as far as warm amp go, there is no competition in this price range. Marantz is the king of warm amplifiers, and you should not look elsewhere when you're searching for a something like that. Thank you so much for watching this review, and if you enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and donate via Patreon if you can. Keep daydreaming and see you soon.